Good afternoon, everybody. It is Steve Lookner with Agenda Free TV. We are here to bring you live coverage because the U.S. has ordered an aircraft carrier strike group to the Caribbean region. Some think this could be a prelude to some sort of military attack on Venezuela by the U.S. A carrier strike group ordered to the Caribbean region. So we want to bring you an update on that. And we're going to take some of your comments and questions on the air. Give me a moment here. I got to make a quick adjustment. This is new today. New today. Carrier strike group ordered to the region. So what does this mean? We're going to talk about it. Oopsie. Oh no, there's a typo. I fixed, thanks for letting me know. Once in a while that happens. I'll fix it. There we go. Not strike group, strike group. Thanks to our moderators for being with us. We have our moderators. Ruth Krafasi is here moderating on YouTube. Thank you, Ruth. Sabrina's moderating as well on YouTube. Thank you. Thanks to our Twitch moderators, Idaho Star, Matthew Kohai 3, and Tariag over there right now. Linda Belk, Larry, Misha moderate for us on X. Thanks also to our Facebook viewers. Well, our viewers, definitely, but also our moderators. Kay Lowry Body is moderating over there. Margaret Riley. Too. Thanks Kristen McConnell Gates for the Facebook stars. Thanks Eris Kalar, our member. Thanks also to I Am Charlie, our member. PJ for the membership. Thanks Jiggle Jess. Thank you so much to Paula for the memberships. It's very nice of you, Paula. Thanks also Joe, who says, take over Mexico, Colombia, and Venezuela. Narco states aren't real countries and should be seen as threats to the U.S. U.S. hemispheric dominance? Wow, very ambitious, Joe. Thank you so much, Joe, for your support. All right. Kieran, our viewer, says, gonna start a war or something. First, let's, hey, thanks to Kay for the stars. That's so kind of you, Kay. Our moderator. Thanks so much, Kay. I really appreciate it. Kay Lowry Body. All right, so here was a statement from Sean Parnell, Pentagon spokesman. He said, in support of the president's directive to dismantle transnational criminal organizations and counter narco-terrorism in defense of the homeland, the Secretary of War has directed the Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group and Embarked Carrier Air Wing to the U.S. Southern Command Area of Responsibility. The enhanced U.S. force presence in USSOUTHCOM Area of Responsibility will bolster U.S. capacity to detect, monitor, and disrupt illicit actors and activities that compromise the safety and prosperity of the U.S. homeland and our security in the Western Hemisphere. These forces will enhance and augment existing capabilities to disrupt narcotics trafficking and degrade and dismantle transnational criminal organizations. Now you might say, oh, Well, it sounds like they're just talking about stopping drug traffickers and criminal organizations. The problem with that theory, there's a couple problems. One is a number of people with expertise in the region I've seen today have said, well, you wouldn't need an aircraft carrier strike group there if you're just worried about stopping. It's not what you do just to stop drug traffickers. Another thing is, remember, the U.S. has, under the Trump administration, claimed that President Maduro of Venezuela is the head of cartels. So, in theory, if it wanted to, the U.S. could take action against Maduro and claim it was doing it in the name of stopping drug cartels. Well, we'll have to see. This is a big deal and a big force. I believe that the aircraft carrier alone has about 75 aircraft on it. I'll show you about that though. Well, I'll show you some facts and figures. Salty as heck says oil, 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 oil. Now, by the way, they say Southern Command Area of Responsibility. The Southern Command Area of Responsibility includes the Caribbean Sea, Central and South America, and the waters around Central and South America. I have seen this reported as Caribbean region. I mean, in theory, they could be off the southern tip of South America, but there's really no good reason for them to be there. So my assumption is that they will go to the Caribbean Sea. I don't know that for a fact, but I'll show you a map shortly of the area of responsibility. Some outlets are reporting it as they're going to the Caribbean. So that's what I chose to do. Caribbean region. All right, so we're going to get you some more details on this, take some comments on the air. Game Craze says drugs are everywhere, so good luck stopping it. A Stir says it costs a lot of money to move a carrier group that large. I doubt it's for nothing. Now, someone might say, oh, maybe it's the way of scaring Maduro so that he'll step down before some military action happens. Now, I don't know if would you send a carrier strike group halfway across the world? I saw a report that they were near Croatia. So would you send the carrier strike group halfway across the world just as a bluff, so to speak, to try to scare somebody? I don't know. I don't know. Huge deal, though. By the way, thank you so much to Lorna Landgren, who says, explain please what the U.S. will gain by getting rid of Maduro. Well, we'll be talking about Maduro stuff during this stream. Thank you, Lorna. Thank you, Gen X, as well. Gen X says, Rand Paul is questioning it legally. I'll have to show you some stuff about that later. Thank you, Gen X. Thank you, Lisa Messer, for your support. Thank you, I Am Charlie. I'll have to see. I might have to look that up. I Am Charlie. Thanks for your support. I Am Charlie. Thanks also Harry Sound from the UK. Thanks Clay, who says, Clay Stalka, who says, our member who says, big deal for our safety in Belize. Thanks IndyCar as well. Eliza Jane, our member, says, I'm confused. I thought no new wars. Jason Goldtrap says, how long will it take to get there? One report I saw today, I think from the New York Times, said several days. It's not going to be today. We'll be looking at some articles about this. Clayton mentions that Hurricane Melissa is going to be in the region. Yeah, I mean, that I don't know if that will affect their where exactly they're going. That's something they would have to be aware of, certainly. That hurricane might have a big impact on Jamaica and Haiti. Maybe we'll talk about that a little later. I mean, if that develops into a hurricane that's impacting a country or countries severely, that's something we would cover, but that would be a separate stream. Okay. Thanks, Sarah, our member. So let's first of all, a bunch to talk about here. Let me show you something about the Gerald R. Ford and the Carrier Strike Group. By the way, if you go to the Navy site about the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier, it says it's the lead ship in the Ford class of aircraft carrier, the first new class in more than 40 years, and will begin the phased replacement of Nimitz class carriers. The Gerald R. Ford is the most capable, adaptable, and lethal combat platform in the world, maintaining the Navy's capacity to project power on a global scale through sustained operations at sea. Wikipedia says it entered the fleet in 2013. It is about 1,100 feet long, has 2 nuclear reactors on board. Aircraft carried 75 plus aircraft on board. Just this ship. This isn't the carrier group. This is the carrier. The carrier group is more than just the carrier. This is just the carrier has 75 plus aircraft. And the crew on board, I had read it was it 10,000? Am I crazy? I thought I'd read a story. I'll have to find this. Or is that the whole carrier group? I'm sorry. The crew is about 4,500. I think maybe the carrier group had 10,000. Anyways, well, it's interesting. I'm seeing a couple different things online. Hold on a moment here. Oh, crew. This says about 2,600. Another thing said 4,500. Complement versus crew. Complement 508 officers, 3,789 enlisted. Crew about 2,600. Where is that from? I'm seeing some different things. It's thousands of people on board. Forbes said that a Navy publication said that the normal crew, air wing, and staff complement should be around 4,500 people. Okay? Oh. Yeah, that's what it looks like. Anyways, I don't want to get hung up on that number. Oh, look, here's something. This is a U.S. military site. DVIDs. This is a U.S. military. They post U.S. military videos and stuff. I think it's a U.S. This is a U.S. Department of War website, and it says 4,179 people work and live on this ship. About 4,200 people work and live on the USS Gerald R. Ford. That's just on that ship. That's just that ship. Now the group, you can see here, Carrier Strike Group 12 is one of 4 U.S. Navy carrier strike groups. The Gerald R. Ford is the aircraft carrier assigned as the strike group's flagship. That's according to Wikipedia. Units currently assigned to this Carrier Strike Group 12 include Carrier Air Wing 8, the Ticonderoga class cruiser USS Normandy, and Destroyer Squadron 2. Oh, look. Hold on a second. Hold on a minute. Oh, wait. Hold on one second. We'll give you more facts about it. Anyways, this is a big deal. Just to be clear, that aircraft carrier itself has around 75 aircraft on it. Thank you to Kenneth Colton for your support. Thank you to Joe for your support. Joe says, take over West Africa. They send us most of the hurricanes. Wow, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Thanks, Deus Volt, 76R member. Michael Abbott. Michael said he heard the air wing isn't always on the ship, so when they're in port, it's much smaller crew. Thank you, I am Charlie as well. Kuro Jack says, it's a flex. Larry Potter says, what a waste of money. How long does it take to cross the Atlantic to the coast of Venezuela? UK Off-CP says. I have read one article that said it would take several days, but I'll try to get you more information about that. Mike Vulcan says, sounds magnificently unnecessary. And this, by the way, here is where U.S. Southern Command, here's their area of responsibility. If I can get this on the screen. So this is U.S. Southern Command. Can I shrink this? Oops, hold on. If I can shrink this, that might be helpful. There we go. There we go. So it's in the red line. The U.S. area of Southern Command is basically Central and South America. The U.S. Southern Command area of responsibility is basically Central and South America. There's Venezuela right there, up at the top here. And the Caribbean Sea and the waters around Central and South America. That is the area of responsibility. I believe, if I have this right, that the admiral running it said he's resigning in December, I think. We'll have to go back. I don't want to get caught up on that now. There's questions about, it's unclear why he was resigning. That story came out a couple weeks ago. But maybe I'll see if there are any updates. But that's for later. Mr. Abrasive thinks the drugs will get here one way or the other, supply and demand. All right, now let's take a little more closer look at this development. Let me show you a couple things here about this. Paula Thompson says, while children here will go hungry. Hey, thanks to Table of Titans and Big Dog Gaming for your support on Twitch and V110. Okay, well, I'm going to read you a couple things about this. This is an article about it from the Washington Post. Pentagon orders aircraft carrier to Latin America as Trump signals escalation. So, again, a big question here is the Trump administration planning some sort of military action against the Maduro regime in Venezuela? The Pentagon on Friday signaled a major expansion of its military campaign against, quote, transnational criminal organizations in Latin America, saying Defense Secretary Hegseth has ordered the aircraft carrier USS Gerald R. Ford and its associated warships to the region in coming days. Now remember, the U.S. has struck about... by the way, there was another one announced today. We'll have to talk about this. I believe the U.S. has now struck 10 boats, mostly in the Caribbean, but a couple in the Pacific. The U.S. military, that it said was carrying drugs. But when you watch the videos of these boats, these are not big armed ships that are going to threaten like a destroyer or a cruiser. These are, they might have guns on board, I don't know. But they're these smaller boats. So, I have a hard time believing, from what I have heard, that an aircraft carrier would be needed to take out those kind of boats. As we mentioned, Sean Parnell, a spokesman, said in a statement that the expanded military presence aims not only to disrupt narcotics trafficking throughout the Western Hemisphere, but to degrade and dismantle the criminal groups that operate there. The announcement follows recent remarks by President Trump indicating that he is prepared to further escalate a military campaign that to date has focused on destroying small speedboats and semi-submersibles accused of smuggling drugs and killing the vessel's occupants. At least 43 people have died in 10 U.S. boat attacks dating to September, according to Trump administration disclosures. Earlier this week, President Trump suggested the land is next, raising the possibility of strikes in Venezuela or other countries. Car Parlor Hot Rods thinks it's a show of force, not escalation. Lori Murphy says there isn't a conflict here. Sam Patton thinks it's about the Panama Canal. Moon says this will not get drugs off your streets. Pontius Pirate says, just say no, America. Simples. He's saying about drugs, about buying drugs, he or she is saying. Yeah, Zoom says no immediate threat, no evidence, no due process, outright murder. The Gerald R. Ford, which is the lead ship in this aircraft carrier group, the aircraft carrier USS Gerald R. Ford, is the world's largest aircraft carrier, typically carrying dozens of fighter jets, numerous helicopters, and more than 4,000 sailors. It arrived for a port stop in Split, Croatia this week, meaning it is days away from its new destination and must transit the Atlantic Ocean first. Amra says there's more going on than we know. If you're wondering about the distance, I can show you the distance it has to travel to get to where it's going to go. Just need to put it up here on the screen for you. All right, so we need, there's Croatia there. Can I do this? I see Croatia. This is Google Maps. Google Maps, everyone. So there's Croatia. So roughly speaking, hold on now. Roughly speaking, it's about 5,000 miles it needs to go. As the crow flies, about 5. I mean, it can't go directly there. It's got to, go through water, and there's not a straight line from Croatia to on the water from Croatia to near Venezuela. So we're talking about 5,000 miles plus. It's got to go. Now, Eric C. thinks there are going to be inland strikes. Continuing with the Washington Post summary of what's going on, the USS Gerald R. Ford has made numerous stops in Europe in recent months, and it is accompanied by 3 destroyers. It was accompanied by 3 destroyers, USS Mahan, USS Winston S. Churchill, and USS Bainbridge. It was not immediately clear today whether these additional warships will travel with the Ford to Latin America or where in the region the Ford will be sent. I'm assuming the Caribbean region, since I've seen it reported by other outlets, and it says U.S. forces have conducted operations off South America in the Caribbean Sea and the Pacific. So I put Caribbean region. Technically speaking, it could be the waters anywhere around Central or South America. And there's already such a big U.S. military presence in the region. The carrier, and it's not just the carrier, it's the carrier strike group, will join an armada that has been assembled in the Caribbean in recent weeks. Other vessels there include the destroyers USS Jason Dunham, USS Gravely, USS Stockdale. They're already there. The guided missile cruiser Lake Erie and the littoral combat ship Wichita. Was that an amphibious landing ship? Littoral, which means the shore. A littoral combat ship, says Wikipedia, is designed for warfare within the distance of the shore. Near-shore operations. And what was I going to say? The Navy and Marine Corps also have combined to deploy the Navy and Marine Corps also already have combined to deploy the Iwo Jima Amphibious Ready Group, a 3-ship task force that includes more sailors and Marines off the coast of Venezuela. The USS Iwo Jima, which is already in the region, off the coast of Venezuela is carrying Harrier fighter jets, helicopters, and a battalion with hundreds of infantry Marines. That's already there. Wow. Hang on, I need to refresh the chat room so I can see it better and read some more of your comments about this. But this is an enormous military presence. Hang on, I need to refresh the chat room so I can see it better. Hold on. Hang on. But this is... Sorry. Renee thinks it's happening. Shattered Dreams says Air Force goes first. Remember that. Josephine, who is from Venezuela, thinks this is a show of force towards the narco regime. Colombia, Nicaragua, maybe Cuba, and the rest of nations completely destroyed. Ink on Page says, I kind of wonder if there isn't a quiet concern that China might send missiles to Venezuela and Colombia. Thereby imperiling the Panama Canal, and we are using cartels as the excuse to address it. A couple of our viewers are bringing up the Panama Canal. Kelly says, what is the end objective? Elizabeth Owen says, are there any submarines there? I wonder, but those are secretive. Thanks, I Am Charlie, who says you can't put a price on saving American lives. Thanks also to Mike Martell. Mike thinks it's a 12-day trip for the strike group. That's what Mike thinks. Bass 300, thank you, Mike, by the way. Thank you, I Am Charlie. Thanks, Vern's Rocks and Stuff. Thanks, Marky B. Yeah. Thanks also Bass 300, who says gunboat diplomacy is not a new U.S. strategy. It usually ends with just presence. Carriers never go anywhere alone, by the way. Thank you, Joe, for your support. I just want to finish this summary that we were looking at by the Washington Post here. The government of Trinidad and Tobago, just off the coast of Venezuela, said in a statement Thursday that the Gravely, a U.S. destroyer, will make a 4-day stop in the western port of Spain in Trinidad and Tobago, beginning Sunday. American Marines, meanwhile, will carry out joint training with Trinidad and Tobago's Defense Force in the same time frame. The Pentagon in recent weeks has also deployed to the region the MV Ocean Trader, a civilian ship converted into a floating special operations base that can dispatch troops into the region on short notice. That ship's presence in the Caribbean came in tandem with the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, an elite helicopter unit that supports the most dangerous missions in the world. That's already there. Visuals analyzed by the Washington Post showed that the helicopters were less than 90 miles from Venezuela's coastline in early October, using aircraft like the MH-6 Little Bird that experts said was a configuration best used for special operations ground assaults. Officials said the imagery depicted flight training, and the unit's presence was to provide options for Trump in the Pentagon should he need them, but officials said that was not evidence of drills for a land assault into Venezuela. So big U.S. military presence already in the Caribbean region, close to Venezuela, and now an aircraft carrier strike group is being sent to the region. What do you think? Maybe we'll have to do a poll question. We're going to do a poll question. Hey, thanks, Fred Witherow, for your support. That's very nice of you, Fred. Thank you. Let's do a poll question. The question's going to be, will the U.S. attack the Maduro regime in some form? Posting the poll right now. I sent another message to Facebook to once again ask them if they could fix their polls. All right, let's see what you guys said about this. Thanks, Babelicious Nails, who says Trump needs to see America first. Robert Martin says he is looking out his hotel room at a U.S. ship, I believe it is, in the harbor in Split, Croatia. Oh, the Gerald Ford. One of our viewers claims he's looking at the Gerald Ford in Split, Croatia, in his hotel room. I mean, it recently has been there. That could be true. All right, let's see what you guys said about in this poll that we just posted. I said, will the U.S. attack the Maduro regime? That's the question. Over on YouTube, here is the current response. "77% on YouTube say yes." How about Twitch? Not that different. 64% on Twitch. 62% now. So the majority of you in the poll think the U.S. is going to attack the Maduro regime. This is going to be an enormous, it's already a huge military presence in the region, but now you're adding a carrier strike group to it. Maureen Francis thinks yes, but they shouldn't. Hate Luzin thinks they already have their target plans on the table. Just yesterday, U.S. bombers flew from Texas towards near Venezuela. We'll have to talk about that too. I want to talk more about the specifics of this, though. Silky Moustache says it's funny to see how the anti-war Trump crowd and Trump himself are suddenly pro-war. Z-Lion says, I'm guessing we'll see some action in the coming days. Thanks for voting in our poll, by the way. Thanks, I Am Charlie, who thinks Maduro will be in a different place every night. Thank you, Dodger Blue. All right, hang on a moment. We are going to show you some more about this. I also want to make sure I'm not missing any updates. You never know what's going to happen, what new news is going to come out. Oh, I did want to share this with you. Jennifer Griffin of Fox News, she said that the USS Gerald Ford aircraft carrier strike group is currently stationed in the Mediterranean. She says, this is the first time in my memory there will be no U.S. aircraft carrier in the Middle East CENTCOM area of responsibility. Also, Phil Stewart, I want to show you this post from Phil Stewart, who is with Reuters. And Phil is a national security reporter with Reuters. And Phil wrote, sending that much U.S. military firepower into Latin America on top of the buildup that has already been underway is a significant move. Had already been underway, is a significant move. It far outstrips what the U.S. armed forces would need to strike individual suspected narco-trafficking targets on land or at sea. Let me read that again. That's from Reuters national security reporter Phil Stewart. He says, it far outstrips what U.S. armed forces would need to strike individual suspected narco-trafficking targets on land or at sea. Gage Cooper says it's not a war, it's a special military operation. The one and only says, so why are they sending such power there? Hassel de Hoff says, LOL or regime change. Mr. Jeffrey V says, we're stretched thin. The Big Cat says, if Trump attacks Venezuela, it's a free-for-all. Banana Bananu says, why would the U.S. bomb Maduro? Remember, the U.S. accuses Maduro of running cartels. There's a $50 million reward out for information leading to Maduro's, I think it's capture or arrest or prosecution or whatever. I mean, look at this. U.S. Department of State, narcotics rewards program wanted. Nicolas Maduro. There it is. For information leading to the arrest and or conviction of the leader of the specially designated global terrorist Cartel de los Soles. For narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, conspiracy to use and carry machine guns and destructive devices in furtherance of a drug crime. That's the U.S. Department of State and Department of Justice. The Department of State says since 2019, more than 50 countries, including the U.S., have refused to recognize Maduro as Venezuela's head of state. They say he declared victory in a presidential election in 2018. In 2019, the National Assembly of Venezuela invoked the Venezuelan Constitution and declared Maduro had usurped power and was not the president. In July 2024, Maduro, in the election last year, Maduro again declared himself the victor despite evidence to the contrary. The U.S. joined many other countries in refusing to recognize Maduro as the legitimately elected president. And the Department of State says Maduro helped manage and ultimately lead the Cartel of the Suns, a Venezuelan drug trafficking organization comprised of high-ranking Venezuelan officials. This is what the Department of State claims. They say, as he gained power in Venezuela, Maduro participated in a corrupt and violent narco-terrorism conspiracy with the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, a designated foreign terrorist organization. They say he facilitated large-scale drug trafficking. He was charged in 2020 in the Southern District of New York for narco-terrorism, conspiracy to import cocaine, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices. $50 million reward leading to the arrest or conviction. So, I mean, given that that's the official position of the United States, based on that official position, they would have reason to go after him. Hebrew Jerusalem Prince, thank you, says, here we are again. It's the same playbook from Iraq. Has nothing to do with drugs. It is about their natural resources, which is their oil. Trippy, thank you. Trippy says, this is a smokescreen for the real reason, oil. Thank you. I am Charlie, by the way, for your support. Abstruse Enigma says, U.S. having a war on drugs after pardoning the Silk Road guy. Where's the logic in that? Jazz thinks it's probably about Colombia too, not just Venezuela. The U.S. announced sanctions on Colombia today, on Colombia's leader. President Trump is not a fan of Colombia's leader, who doesn't seem to be a fan of President Trump. We'll have to talk about that too. Jackson says the boats he has blown up can travel max distance of 380 miles. America is 1,300 miles from Venezuela. Do the math. One of our viewers said, hold on, where is it here? Zico Beto said, crazy how Trump haters are now defending Maduro. That shows how their brain work. They can't see past their hate. What is going to happen with this aircraft carrier strike group heading towards the Caribbean region? Paul McCleary with Politico says that the aircraft carrier is in the Adriatic Sea and will take a week to make it to the Caribbean. A U.S. official in a ship tracking site confirms. So again, Paul McCleary from Politico is reporting that the aircraft carrier will take a week to reach the Caribbean. A week. All right, let's talk about this some more. What is going on here? U.S. is sending an aircraft carrier to Latin America in a major escalation of military firepower. Wow. This was just announced several hours ago. Thanks, Mama457 Rose. And Time Lights Out, who says it's going to get real soon. And I Am Charlie. Let me just shout out our mods again real quick. I really appreciate them being here. Beth Mythical, Sabrina, Ruth Krafasi over there on YouTube, Janet B, Beezy, Roberts May Queen, thank you. They're all over there on YouTube. Our Twitch moderators, Idaho Star, Matthew Kohai, 3, I Got That Fire, thank you. Also, thanks to Zico Beto for your support on Twitch. Kay Lowry Body, Margaret Riley on Facebook. Thanks to Diane Allworth for subscribing over there. Thanks, Diane. Also, Linda Belk, Larry, and Misha on X. Michael Abbott says it's about Guyana resources we need found there. Thanks, Michael Abbott. All right. Treasure the Time says looks like a desperate dying empire. The AP reports the U.S. military is sending an aircraft carrier to the waters off South America, the Pentagon announced today, in the latest escalation of military firepower in a region where the Trump administration has unleashed more rapid strikes in recent days against boats it accuses of carrying drugs. We will talk about the new strike announced today. Defense Secretary Hegseth ordered the USS Gerald Ford and its strike group to deploy to the U.S. Southern Command region to bolster U.S. capacity to detect, monitor, and disrupt illicit actors in activities that compromise the safety and prosperity of the United States, Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell said. The USS Ford, which has 5 destroyers in its strike group. Are they all coming with it? I don't know. The USS Ford, which has 5 destroyers in its strike group, is now deployed to the Mediterranean Sea. One of its destroyers is in the Arabian Sea and another is in the Red Sea, a person familiar told the Associated Press. As of Friday, the aircraft carrier was in port in Croatia on the Adriatic Sea. That person, who spoke on the condition of anonymity, would not say how long it would take for the strike group to arrive in the waters off South America, or if all 5 destroyers would make the journey. As I mentioned, a Politico reporter says it will take a week. Deploying an aircraft carrier will surge major additional resources to a region that has already seen an unusually large U.S. military buildup in the Caribbean Sea and the waters off Venezuela. The latest deployment and the quickening pace of U.S. strikes on alleged drug boats, including one today, raised new speculation about how far the Trump administration may go in operations it says are targeting at drug trafficking, including whether it could try to topple Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. He faces charges of narco-terrorism in the U.S. Could you imagine? Momachti thinks you're going to need 50 or 100,000 troops for a Venezuela invasion? I mean, there wouldn't necessarily have to be an invasion. For example, if the U.S. thought they knew where he was, they could try some sort of special operation to capture him, maybe. I don't know. It's a possibility. Zune Mangs says, can Trump start wars himself now without congressional approval? Rebecca Wolf says he wants regime change. Shapongle says this move is so expensive they almost have to invade, even if Maduro turns himself in. Eschew Cognitive Dissonance says the relentless beat of those war drums can feel exhausting. Hang on a moment here. Faytux News mentioned that CNN has a report. CNN is reporting today, just to let you know. Faytux News posted this. Thanks, Faytux. CNN is now reporting that Trump is considering plans to target cocaine facilities inside Venezuela. New report from CNN, guys. I'm going to pass along this. Look, I have it right here. Look on your screen right now. Trump considers targeting cocaine facilities inside Venezuela, CNN reports. It's a Reuters article. Hey, thanks, I am Charlie, who says no war, no invasion, surgical strikes, special operations. Thanks, C. Johnson, who says this is just an end around to annex Greenland. Thanks, Lisa Sawyer. Thanks, Confidence in God, who says, will there be a land war? Thanks, Jean-Paul Lachance, for the gift membership. So nice of you. Thanks, Verns Rocks and Stuff, who says, this is what I voted for. Thanks, Trippy. Trippy says, fact, the U.S. gained access to Iraqi oil reserves following the war. The same will be true with Venezuela. Wake the hell up. That's what Trippy says. One of our viewers, Dreamcast Ultra says draft soon. David Carson said this would be an act of war. Amy Clark says we're going to get their oil and oust Maduro. Our viewer, No New Brunner, says where are checks and balances? Okay, so as Reuters says, it's a short article in Reuters. Reuters says CNN reported today that U.S. President Trump is considering plans to target facilities producing cocaine and routes used for drug trafficking inside Venezuela, but has not yet decided whether to proceed, CNN reports, citing 3 U.S. officials. Stasha Morgan says we're going to war for a non-issue? The CNN report does say that, yes, as Reuters said, he is considering plans to target cocaine facilities and drug trafficking routes inside Venezuela, but has not yet made a decision. CNN points out that already the U.S. has deployed more than 4,500 Marines and sailors and naval and air assets to the region. CNN also reports that Trump has been weighing strikes inside Venezuela itself as part of a broader strategy aimed at weakening Maduro. By the way, another interesting thing that's pointed out in the CNN report is they say that according to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, Venezuela is not a cocaine-producing country. Almost all coca crops, the main ingredient of cocaine, are concentrated in Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia. Give me a moment here. I'm going to read you a little more from this update from AP on this story. By the way, thanks to Alan J. Mackey, who says just about every past U.S. president has targeted an enemy of the U.S. without approval. You don't need approval for this. Please get that in your head, says our viewer, Alan J. Mackey. Hey, thanks, Alan, for your support. Thanks, John Jocks, for our new member, John. Humongous, thanks to be our member. Thanks for being a member. Naaman Gaijin, thank you, who says no new wars against this one, no new wars except this one. I voted for regime change wars, higher insurance premiums, and ballrooms. Trump 2028, we're taking over the world. Lyle Paradise thinks Trump needs to give Congress 48-hour notice before starting a war, but if it's a defensive measure, he can order strikes right away. Angie says, what do you know? Trump lied again. Mamachti thinks this is Trump's George Bush's WMD pretext. To show you where this is, again, this is right there on your screen, that is the U.S. Southern Command Area of Responsibility, which includes the Caribbean Sea, which is here. That's Caribbean Sea is here. If I can make this bigger. See, it says Caribbean Sea right there. Oops. Caribbean Sea. There's Venezuela. There's Colombia. Caribbean Sea. And then the Pacific Ocean is on the other side of Panama. But basically this, the area of responsibility is the Caribbean Sea and the waters around Central and South America. That's the area of responsibility of the U.S. Southern Command. And if you go to Wikipedia, it says map of the Caribbean Sea. There it is. But you can see Venezuela is right at the bottom there. I don't know if you guys can see that. But Venezuela is right, hold on, there. There you go. That's from Wikipedia. There's Venezuela, there's Colombia. Thanks, Vern's Rocks and stuff. Also, Gen X. Yeah, Jen, we're going to talk about the admiral who resigned as the head of U.S. Southern Command. That was weeks ago. I believe that it has not been publicly confirmed why he resigned. There was speculation maybe he was having issues with the campaign against the boats. Thank you, Titan74, who says the government is down, Trump has all the power. All right, let's give you some more details about this carrier strike group deployment. Oh, you know what I never did is I never ended the poll on. Most of you, the majority of you thought I did a poll earlier that said, will the U.S. attack the will the U.S. attack the Maduro regime? The majority of you said yes. Spooky says, I hope Maduro gives up himself. All right, look, let's look at this for a second. Hold on here. Hold on here. Moving thousands more troops into the region. There are already, before the carrier strike group even gets there, There are already more than 6,000 sailors and Marines on 8 warships in the region. If the entire USS Ford carrier strike group arrives, that could bring nearly 4,500 more sailors, as well as the 9 squadrons of aircraft assigned to the carrier. Complicating the situation is Tropical Storm Melissa, which has been nearly stationary in the Central Caribbean, with forecasters warning it could soon strengthen into a powerful hurricane. So that's something they're going to have to pay attention to. I'll be keeping an eye on that. It's possible we'll do coverage of that depending on how it develops. Hours before Sean Parnell with the Pentagon announced the news about the carrier strike group, Secretary Hegseth said the military had conducted the 10th strike on a suspected drug-running boat, leaving 6 people dead and bringing the death count for the attacks that began in early September to at least 43 people. Hegseth said on social media that the vessel struck overnight was operated by the Tren de Aragua gang. It was the second time the Trump administration has tied one of its operations to the gang that originated in a Venezuelan prison. Hegseth said, "If you are a narco-terrorist smuggling drugs in our hemisphere, we will treat you like Al-Qaeda. Day or night, we will map your networks, track your people, hunt you down, and kill you." Those strikes have ramped up from 1 every few weeks when they first began last month to 3 this week. 3 boats destroyed this week. 2 of the most recent strikes were carried out in the Eastern Pacific Ocean, expanding the area where the military has launched attacks and shifting to where much of the cocaine is smuggled from the world's largest producers, including Colombia. Escalating tensions with Colombia, the Trump administration today imposed sanctions on Colombian President Petro, his family, and a member of his government over accusations of involvement in the global drug trade. By the way, here is what Hegseth, the video that Secretary Hegseth posted of this strike today. Here. This is the 3rd boat he's announced a strike on in 2 days. But I think one was hit Tuesday, one was hit Wednesday, and one was hit overnight. He said the vessel was known by our intelligence to be involved in illicit narcotics smuggling. 6 male narco-terrorists were aboard the vessel. All 6 were killed. This was the first strike at night. This was the first of these strikes at night. Mad Hatter says this world is insane. ED says no evidence it was a drug boat. No arrest. Dead people don't talk. Danny G says no one is forcing people to consume substances. Kelly says decimated. Rick Barnett says unfortunately the drug smugglers will start putting women and children on the boats with the drugs. Planet 003 says Maduro is going to be like dead. Robert M24 says this is horrible. All drug traffickers' lives matter. Chasing Greatness says this is going to be a disaster, just like the confrontation with the Houthis was. Towel Thrower says your Trump devotion syndrome has you thinking Donnie is going to stop drugs from getting into America, LMAO. Dancing in the Sand says we are not going to know what the military is planning until after it happens and may not ever really know. By the way, thank you so much to Alan J. Mackey for your support. He says his grandfather was from Venezuela. He's related to Simón Bolívar. He thinks 90% of people from Venezuela would welcome a change. He lived 7 miles off the coast of Venezuela. Thank you, Alan J. Mackey. I really appreciate that. Thanks, Sniper, for your support. And Ron Dykman. And Titan74, who thinks... Oh, I think I read that comment from Titan74 already. Thank you. And Gen X. And Sydney for the memberships. Thank you, Sydney. Let's give you a little more perspective on this. I was reading this article by AP. So again, U.S. ordering aircraft carrier strike group to the Caribbean region today. Thanks also to Wallfly for the memberships. And I Am Charlie, thank you so much. I Am Charlie for your support. So AP says, the strike today, the latest strike on an alleged drug boat, the 10th one, announced today by Secretary Hegseth. The strike drew parallels to the first announced by the U.S. last month by focusing on Tren de Aragua, which the Trump administration has designated a foreign terrorist organization and blamed for being at the root of the violence and drug dealing that plagues some cities. While not mentioning the origin of the latest boat, the Republican administration says at least 4 of the 10 boats it has hit have come from Venezuela. Yesterday, we'll have to talk about this. Yesterday, the U.S. military flew a pair of supersonic heavy bombers up to the coast of Venezuela. Maduro argues that the U.S. operations are the latest effort to force him out of office. Maduro on Thursday praised security forces and a civilian militia for defense exercises along some 2,000 kilometers of coastline to prepare for the possibility of a U.S. attack. In the span of 6 hours, said Maduro, 100% of the country's coastline was covered in real time with all the equipment and heavy weapons to defend all of Venezuela's coast if necessary. An expert, Elizabeth Dickinson with the International Crisis Group, says the U.S. military's presence is less about drugs than sending a message to countries in the region to align with U.S. interests. She said, an expression that I'm hearing a lot is drugs are the excuse, and everyone knows that, she said. And I think that message is very clear in regional capitals. So the messaging here is that the U.S. is intent on pursuing specific objectives, and it will use military force against leaders in countries that don't fall in line. Wow. Thank you to Alan J. Mackey, who quoted somebody who's saying that recent escalations have brought renewed focus to Venezuela's longstanding claim over the Essequibo region, administered by Guyana. Maybe if we have a chance, we'll talk about that. I don't want to go there right this second, but thank you so much, Alan J. Mackey. I appreciate it. And I am Charlie. Thanks also for Yoki63. Ayoki63 for subscribing on Twitch, and ZeroDark30 for subscribing on Twitch, and Pragmatic Realist for gifting a sub on Twitch. Thanks Tribal Convictions for your support on Twitch. BF says this is the stupidest timeline. Recently, by the way, the Trump administration has been, in recent weeks and months, the Trump administration has described these drug traffickers and cartels as terrorists, declared some cartels to be terrorist groups. Secretary Hegseth keeps comparing these people on the boats to Al-Qaeda. You can see AP says here, Hegseth's remarks around the strikes have recently begun to draw a direct comparison between the war on terrorism that the U.S. declared after the September 11, 2001 attacks and the Trump administration's crackdown on drug traffickers. President Trump this month declared drug cartels to be unlawful combatants and said the U.S. was in an armed conflict with them, relying on the same legal authority used by the Bush administration after 9/11. When reporters asked Trump yesterday whether he would request that Congress issue a declaration of war against the cartels, he said that wasn't the plan. He said, I think we're just going to kill people that are bringing drugs into the country, okay? We're going to kill them, they're going to be like dead. He also did say yesterday that they were going to go to Congress. So it's unclear if the Trump administration is going to go to Congress for approval of this stuff at all. Lawmakers from both political parties have expressed concerns about Trump ordering the military actions without receiving authorization from Congress or providing many details. There's been controversy. So look, we'll have to see if there's strikes on the ground in Latin America, if President Trump uses this carrier group to carry out land. He's talked about carrying out land operations. He said it's coming. Will he attack drug-related targets or Maduro-related targets in Venezuela or in other countries? We don't know. But there's been controversy over these strikes on the boats. If I can just, for a second, kind of summarize some of the controversy about the strikes on the ships. There's several aspects that have made them controversial. So I just want to mention that for a second. I'm going to take some more comments too. Hold on, I had something right here I was going to summarize for you. So the New York Times points out that a number of experts have said, just to summarize a point they made the point that a number of experts have said that it's illegal, that these strikes are illegal because under domestic and international law, you can't deliberately target civilians who are not directly participating in hostilities, even if they're alleged criminals. That's one criticism, is that these people are not actually in an armed conflict with the United States. And even if they're doing criminal behavior, that under the law, that doesn't allow you to just summarily kill them. Another point I've seen made is that drug crimes in the U.S. are not death penalty crimes. I'm not telling you to go along with this. I'm just giving you some of the reasons for the controversy over these boat strikes. Now, the Trump administration has said that these are lawful strikes on the boats because Trump has determined, as we were just saying, that these drug traffickers are carrying out an armed attack on the U.S. And that the country is in armed combat with the cartels. But the New York Times had an article today, and they pointed out that some certainly think there is a difference between drug trafficking and the kind of armed attacks you would normally have in an armed conflict. So those are just some of the aspects of why this. Now, in addition, there's the aspect that that you don't have any kind of judicial proceeding or due process for the people on the boats. There's no trial. There's no public show of evidence that they're guilty of doing any of the things that they're being alleged to have done. So these are, again, you don't have to support any of these arguments. But my point is, I just wanted to lay out some reasons that these Trump administration deadly strikes on these 10 boats so far that have killed 43 people, are controversial. Rough Ready says, Trump don't care, boat go boom. Matt says there's no evidence that you know of. Oh, I didn't say that there was no evidence. You need to carefully listen to what I said. What I said is that there has not been publicly presented evidence, which is a reason that some say, that some criticize, one reason some criticize these strikes. Bunny Rabbit says King Trump is the best Trump. Chemo says these are called extrajudicial killings. Jared W. says people hear what they want. Serenity Now says they're declared terrorists, no trial needed. Actually, that's another point of controversy. A couple things. So, for one, some dispute that these people carrying out these alleged drug operations meet the definition of terrorists. For example, the New York Times said that that by definition, terrorists, by I guess popular definition of terrorism, terrorists are motivated by ideological or religious beliefs, but these cartels presumably are just doing this to make money. Also, one other point that the Times made when summarizing some of the controversies is they said that under the law, when the executive branch designates a group as a foreign terrorist organization, legally that allows it to do things like freeze its assets. It allows it to criminalize people helping that group, but legally that doesn't allow summary killing of people suspected of being in the group. Now, I'm not a legal expert. I'm just trying to present you with some of the different reasons that some have seen that these strikes on the boats have been controversial. The Washington Post points out that in virtually all other drug interdictions before last month, the suspects were stopped by U.S. authorities, primarily the Coast Guard, and detained by U.S. law enforcement and charged. Also, the Washington Post said today, I think it was, they said law of war experts maintain that the strikes on the boats are illegal because those slain by U.S. forces are not combatants engaged in an armed conflict with the United States, but instead are suspected criminals. So again, you can think what you want about this. I just wanted to take a couple minutes and outline some of the controversy around these strikes. A question I had about this is, if the administration feels that people involved in the drug trade, people involved in bringing drugs and making them available to the U.S. public, if the Trump administration believes the proper way to deal with them is just to blow them up, do they also feel that about drug dealers within the U.S.? People or people who operate drug warehouses or drug producers within the U.S.? I don't know. But I mean, if the Trump administration considers people bringing on a boat, bringing drugs on a boat that supposedly are destined for the U.S. as terrorists who should just be summarily killed, do they think that about, say, drug dealers in the U.S. or drug suppliers in the U.S. or drug wholesalers or drug producers in the U.S.? Or would they make a distinction between them? I don't know. Rick C says it's completely different. Again, I don't know what. I'd be interested in hearing the how if that is asked sometime to the administration. I'd be interested in hearing the response. Now, Abel says, "Are they citizens?" So no, but foreigners are fair game. Well, here's the thing, though. If the reason that the Trump administration feels that it's justified to kill them summarily, the reason is that they're terrorists in an armed conflict with the U.S., well, why couldn't a citizen match? What about that definition specifies that they need to be non-citizens? I don't know. Again, there might be, there might be all kinds of things that the administration would say in response. It's just a question I had. It's a thought I had. Anyways, let's get back to talking about the carrier strike group. I mean, I know the stream itself is not about the boats being blown up, but again, the reason given for the carrier strike group being sent to the Caribbean region involves drugs was cited as one of the reasons. To go back to what the Pentagon spokesperson statement said, right? Pulling it up. I'm pulling it up here for you. Sean Parnell said, in support of the president's directive to dismantle transnational criminal organizations and counter narco-terrorism in defense of the homeland, the Secretary of War has directed the Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group and Embarked Carrier Air Wing to the U.S. Southern Command Area of Responsibility. So, I mean, the countering narco-terrorism is one of the major reasons that this carrier strike group is being called to the region. Died Suddenly says, I voted for this. Kimberly Ford says, peace through strength. Richard says, so now the anti-war president is a war president. Joanne Schlicker thinks Trump has too much going on in too many places. Shady Lady says, I don't want to be spending millions of dollars to do any of this. It's entirely unnecessary and a ridiculous waste of resources if our border is so super secure. I Am Charlie thinks Trump wants death penalty for drug dealers in USA. Thanks, I Am Charlie. I can't remember what exactly he said about this over the years. I don't want to misquote him. Eddie M says, it's clear some of you want drugs in our country. Hey Rachel says drug dealers are killers. Lisa says definitely not going on a cruise now. Pat Carbone thinks Venezuela is being invaded. Andy Basin says goodbye Maduro. Thanks to Big Dog Gaming for your support. All right, let's give you some more information about this. There's so many aspects of this story, but I mean, an aircraft carrier strike group is headed to the Caribbean region, guys. Hey, I just want to mention real quick an update about Melissa, which could be a Category 5 hurricane. So let's just take a quick look. I mean, this is in the Caribbean Sea. Melissa is in the Caribbean Sea right now. Okay. The National Hurricane Center says Melissa is expected to rapidly intensify into a major hurricane this weekend, life-threatening and catastrophic flash flooding and landslides expected in portions of southern Hispaniola and Jamaica throughout the weekend. This is very serious. Certainly, we could end up doing streams on this depending on how the storm develops. But that's not good. What you're seeing there, those are basically 12, each circle is roughly 12 hours. Most of them are 12-hour differences there. And what you're seeing is, now this could certainly change, this forecast line, but you have currently, why is it not turning on? There you go. You have that storm becoming a major hurricane and basically making a direct hit on Jamaica. And also in the days before, for a couple days before, you have this major hurricane very close to Jamaica. Then you have it moving across Cuba. Now, this could change. Also, potential big impacts for Haiti. So the course of the storm, the projected course, could certainly change. Now, this is 2 p.m. Wednesday here. So one of the articles I think I read said it would take a week for the carrier group to get there, which would be, the end of next week. I don't know how much of an impact this will have on the carrier group's plans. It's possible that by the time they get to the region, this thing is moving to the north or northeast or whatever. Yeah, just an update about the category. Currently, it is set to be, right now it's predicted to reach up to 155 miles an hour. And I have to remind myself of the Saffir-Simpson scale. That would be just below Cat 5. But very close. Now it could become a Cat 5, but with 155 is the projected high. That's just below a Cat 5. 157 is Cat 5. But you can see here, due to Melissa's slow motion, a prolonged multi-day period of damaging winds and heavy rainfall resulting in potentially catastrophic flash flooding and numerous landslides is likely to begin in Jamaica late Saturday or Sunday. There is an increasing risk of life-threatening storm surge when the center of Melissa nears Jamaica early next week. Preparations to protect life and property should be rushed to completion. Haiti. Heavy rainfall will result in catastrophic flash flooding and landslides across southwestern Haiti into early next week. Extensive damage to roads and buildings is expected, potentially isolating communities for an extended period of time. Wow. Immediate preparations to protect life and property should be taken. Strong winds could also potentially last for a day or more over the Tiburon Peninsula of Haiti. There could be catastrophic flash flooding in numerous landslides in southern portions of the Dominican Republic. Interests in Cuba and the Bahamas should monitor the progress of Melissa, since there's an increasing risk of significant storm surge, damaging winds, and heavy rainfall by the middle of next week. The risk of life-threatening flash flooding and landslides in eastern Cuba are increasing. So we will be keeping an eye on that as well. I wanted to just, that's a new update from the National Hurricane Center. All right. Anyways. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that. Let's talk some more about this carrier strike group that has been ordered to the Caribbean region, to the SOUTHCOM region, which includes Venezuela and the water off the coast of Venezuela. I'm going to pull something up for you here. U.S. to escalate military presence in South America with aircraft carrier group. This is the world's largest warship. Look at it. The USS Gerald R. Ford. The world's largest warship. Have Russia and China reacted? I need to look up on that. I don't know if they've reacted to this. Thanks, by the way, to Ruth Krafasi, who's moderating, Beth Mythical, Beezy, Roberts Mayqueen. Thank you. Did I say Beth Mythical? K. Lowry Body, Margaret Riley on Facebook. Thanks, Chuck Mosca, for subscribing. Chuck says, so you think our military is responsible to protect the citizens of Venezuela? Well, it sounds like if there's action in Venezuela, the administration might argue that it's to protect the citizens of the U.S. Thanks also Robert Rial II for subscribing on Facebook. Thanks Linda Belk, Larry, Misha for moderating, and also LB Prairie Dawn, Idaho Star, I Got That Fire, Matthew Kothai 3 on Twitch. Okay, so there's the ship there. Reuters says President Donald Trump's administration escalated a U.S. military buildup in the Caribbean today by announcing the deployment of the Gerald Ford aircraft carrier group to Latin America, a show of force far beyond any past counter-narcotics effort, and Washington's most assertive move in the region yet. Let me read that again. This is a show of force far beyond any past counter-narcotics effort, and Washington's most assertive move in the region yet. The deployment which adds to the 8 warships, a nuclear submarine, and F-35 aircraft already in the region, marks a significant escalation amid heightened tensions with Venezuela, whose government Washington has long accused of harboring drug traffickers and undermining democratic institutions. Our viewer Shimizu says the war on drugs that should have happened a long time ago. Again, reportedly, currently the ship is in Croatia. The Ford, which was commissioned in 2017, is the U.S. Was it 2017 when it was commissioned? I thought it was 2013. Hold on. According to Wikipedia, it was launched in 2013. It was commissioned in 2017. Yes, it was commissioned in 2017. That's when it was formally commissioned by the Navy, and it was delivered to the Navy. Sorry. So, just to clarify that. So, it is. This is the United States' newest aircraft carrier. It was only commissioned about 8 years ago. And it is the world's largest aircraft carrier. Now, they say with more than 5,000 sailors aboard. Venezuelan President Maduro has repeatedly alleged the U.S. is hoping to drive him from power. On Thursday, Maduro warned that if the U.S. ever intervened in Venezuela, the working class would rise and a general insurrectional strike would be declared in the streets until power is regained, adding that millions of men and women with rifles would march across the country. Is that really true? I don't know. Captain Freedom, our viewer, says this is not about drugs, not really. This is about flexing on a narco-terrorist communist dictator. Stormat thinks Maduro is delusional. Tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela's neighbor Colombia have also spiked in recent days, with Trump accusing the Colombian president Gustavo Petro of being an illegal drug leader and a bad guy, language Petro's government says is offensive. Remember, Trump has authorized the CIA to conduct covert operations in Venezuela. Today, the Trump administration announced it was imposing sanctions against the Colombian president, citing alleged illicit drugs, increasing military buildup. Trump has said his Republican administration plans to brief the U.S. Congress on operations against drug cartels, and that even though he did not need a declaration of war, operations against cartels on land would be next. Trump said that the last couple days, that there's going to be operations on land. With only 11 aircraft carriers in the U.S. military's arsenal, they are a scarce resource, and their schedules are usually set well in advance, says Reuters. The Ford carrier, which includes, I think, 2 nuclear reactors, can hold more than 75 military aircraft, including fighter aircraft like F-18 Super Hornet jets and the E-2 Hawkeye, which can act as an early warning system. It has an arsenal of missiles like the evolved Sea Sparrow missile, a medium-range surface-to-air missile used to counter drones and aircraft. The Ford also includes sophisticated radars that can help control air traffic and navigation. The supporting ships for the Ford, such as the Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruiser Normandy, the Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers Thomas Hudner, Ramage, and Kearney, and Roosevelt, include surface-to-air, surface-to-surface, and anti-submarine warfare capabilities. It is the world's largest warship, the USS Gerald R. Ford. F1 51 DV51 says it's a very impressive piece of machinery. Blake C says, what an absolute joke. Why are we at war with Venezuela, blowing up fishing boats and murdering people? According to Wikipedia, it says that installed power 2 nuclear reactors. That's what Wikipedia says. And it quotes 2 different sources for that. That's at least what it says. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? UV says it has 2 nuclear reactors. Ink on Page says they're just going to give Maduro an aggressive neckbeard trim. Hey, thanks the Weather Buff. The Weather Buff said you don't send this much firepower to break up a drug cartel. Thank you so much, the Weather Buff, for your support. Thank you, Benjamin Burns, who says, no one but those who fell for the Iraqi WMD scam think this is about drugs, LOL. Thank you, Sean T, for subscribing, for being a member for over 2 years. Thanks, Marky B. Yeah. Thanks, Deirdre McLean. Thanks for your support. I am Charlie as well. Camus thinks Trump will bomb Venezuela to distract from the Epstein files. Thanks so much, Camus. Michael Hutchinson, thank you. Michael says, do you think the U.S. is heading to war with Venezuela? Rita, our member, says due process for U.S. citizens abroad, but not others. Thank you, Starry Nights, our member. A reporter with Politico said it would be about a week before the carrier group gets there. Now, I don't know if the storm in the region is going to delay that at all. We haven't even talked about the bombers that were flown near the coast yesterday. And we didn't talk yet about the new sanctions on Colombia's president. Oh, so much to talk about. Here, look at this. Guys, look at this. U.S. military flew supersonic B-1 bombers up to the coast of Venezuela. That's from yesterday. Hey, thanks to Dario from Mexico, who says, would it be possible this is a diversion for what could happen to the global economy before the end year? Inflation up, government shutdown, crypto? Thank you also, Tim747, who says, why would they give details about ship being sent? Wouldn't you want to keep your plan secret? Maybe something happened a lot sooner than a week. Well, I understand your question. One thing is, maybe with a carrier group, I don't know, maybe it's hard to keep that secret if all those ships are moving across the world and taking days to do it. But another response I have for you, I don't know if all, because sometimes carrier groups, they don't say where exactly they are, but they're not telling us exactly where they're going. But what I'll say is this, One theory, which someone might have, is that the intention is to scare Maduro. Maybe the U.S. Would like to scare him into making a deal to leave power. And is this, we were talking about this earlier in the stream, is this like a bluff to scare him into leaving office and leaving the country? I don't know. Thanks, Tim747, for your support in the question. Thanks also to Jiggle Jess and FloJo TV. FloJo says, doesn't Venezuela have the largest reserves of oil in the world? Could this have anything to do with it? Thanks, Goofy for Jesus, who says, didn't Obama drone kill an American and son over Al-Qaeda links? Minio thinks the intelligent option is to try to scare him. Large Horchata says, just another American regime change, nothing to see here. Drew D said, why would we use our best aircraft carrier to bluff? We would use a smaller one. UV says, how much bombing will be required to make him run away? Janet Smith says, so people here were right about flights over Venezuela yesterday. First of all, there were not flights over Venezuela yesterday. Second of all, we had people in our chat yesterday claiming that the U.S. was, multiple people, insisting that the U.S. was attacking Venezuela, which was false. We actually, during the stream yesterday, talked about the flights from Texas to off the coast of Venezuela. Let me mention this, though. AP says the U.S. military flew a pair of supersonic heavy bombers up to the coast of Venezuela on Thursday, a little over a week after another group of American bombers made a similar journey as part of a training exercise to simulate an attack. Is this really a practice run? Again, is it an attempt to frighten Maduro? I have no idea. Now, this article came out yesterday before the carrier group was announced. The U.S. military has built up an unusually large force in the Caribbean Sea and the waters off Venezuela, raising speculation that President Trump could try to topple Venezuelan President Maduro. Maduro faces charges of narcoterrorism in the U.S. Adding to the speculation, the U.S. military since early September has been carrying out lethal strikes on vessels in the waters off of Venezuela that Trump says are trafficking drugs. According to flight trafficking data, a pair of B-1 Lancer bombers took off from Dyess Air Force Base in Texas on Thursday and flew through the Caribbean and up to the coast of Venezuela. A U.S. official who spoke on condition of anonymity confirmed that a training flight of B-1 bombers took place in the Caribbean. The B-1 bomber can carry more bombs than any other plane in the U.S. inventory. A similar flight of slower B-52 Stratofortress bombers was conducted in the region last week. The bombers were joined by Marine Corps F-35B stealth fighter jets. A squadron is currently based in Puerto Rico for what the Pentagon called a bomber attack demo in photos online. When Trump was asked about yesterday's bomber flights and if it was meant to ramp up military pressure on Venezuela, he said it's false. But we're not happy with Venezuela for a lot of reasons, drugs being one of them. Again, even before today, when the carrier group was told to go to the region, the U.S. force in the Caribbean already included 8 warships, a P-8 maritime patrol aircraft, MQ-9 Reaper drones, and an F-35 fighter squadron. Also, a submarine has also been confirmed to be operating in the waters off South America. Trump yesterday said he has the legal authority to carry out strikes on the alleged drug-carrying boats, and suggested similar strikes could be done on land. We will hit them very hard when they come in by land, Trump told reporters yesterday. We're totally prepared to do that, and we'll probably go back to Congress and explain exactly what we're doing when we come to the land. What is happening? Truth WSYF says the B-1 is a devastating weapon. Kegger 3 says Trump won't bomb fentanyl factories or smugglers in China because he knows the U.S. military is weak. T. Medina thinks this will be a warning for any other Latin American country that wants to get too comfortable with China. Excuse me. Toolman says we need to protect our hemisphere. Andrew says, what's the cost of a full tank on the B-1? Reflector thinks there's more going on than meets the eye. Time will tell, and we'll find out what this is all about. Steve Kelly says some concerns about the size of military buildup seems like a disproportionate one-sided situation. Not sure Venezuela is contributing that much to drug trafficking to U.S. that it requires such a response. A point about that, by the way. Sorry. Hold on a second here. I wanted to mention something about that whole question about what is coming from Venezuela, at least a little about it. Hold on. Where is this here? Here. So, this is an article from the Washington Post 4 days ago. And it says, at least half of the strikes have transpired on the boats have transpired in the waters between Venezuela and Trinidad and Tobago, according to locals. Records and interviews with 20 people familiar with the route or the strikes, including current and former U.S. and international officials, contradict the administration's claims. That passage, they said, is not ordinarily used to traffic synthetic opioids such as fentanyl, nor are the drugs typically headed for the U.S. Trinidad and Tobago is both a destination market for marijuana and a transshipment point for South American cocaine bound for West Africa and Europe, according to U.S. officials, Trinidadian police, and independent analysts. The fentanyl seized in the U.S., by contrast, is typically manufactured in Mexico using precursors from China and smuggled in through the land border, most often by U.S. citizens. Officials say the military strikes are unlikely as a result to cut overdose deaths in the U.S. Now, also in the article, they do say how cocaine courses through Venezuela. They say Venezuela, U.S. investigators say, is now a narco free-for-all filled with armed groups from throughout Latin America. Most of the South American cocaine bound for North America flows through the Pacific, but some does depart Venezuela through the Caribbean, according to U.S. officials. Remember, Venezuela is not on the Pacific side, it's on the Caribbean side. Most of the South American cocaine bound for North America flows through the Pacific Ocean, but some does depart Venezuela through the Caribbean, according to U.S. officials and analysts who track drug routes. The point is that, I think what our viewer was suggesting, is that most of the fentanyl is not coming from Venezuela, and I mean, this article is a source that suggests that most of the South American cocaine bound for North America flows through the Pacific Ocean, but some does depart Venezuela through the Caribbean. So there's this question of, if the U.S. takes action against Venezuela with all this growing military force, is the purpose really chiefly to stop drug flow, or is there something, is the purpose to get rid of the Maduro regime? Or some other purpose? The Economist had an article yesterday, and in their article they said that the president has claimed that at least some of the ships carried fentanyl that have been blown up. The Economist says fentanyl mainly comes to the U.S. by land from Mexico. Hey, thanks to American Rebel 27 for your support. He says, crazy times we're living in. Thanks, Josephine from Canada. Thanks, John Paul LeChance for the gift memberships. That's so nice of you. Thanks, Dupper Bob. Thanks, Red Girl. Thanks, Goofy for Jesus. And Who Shot JR on Twitch and Big Dog Gaming. I'm going to do another poll question right now. Taco Chalupa says the cartel are terrorists. Another poll question is going to be, so President Trump has said that land attacks are next. Land attacks. I guess by that he would mean land attacks on drug activity, drug-related targets in Venezuela or elsewhere in Latin America. So with that in mind, when will first U.S. land attack on drug target be? And I'll say within a week, within a month, after a month, never. This is during the Trump administration. Okay, so I'm posting this right now, this poll. President Trump has been teasing these land attacks. So let me post this again. I just posted it on YouTube. Now I'm going to post it on Twitch. Where is Twitch? Here it is. When will first land attack on drug target be? Within a week, within a month, after a month, and then never. I mean never like in the Trump administration. Okay, let's see what you guys posted about this. Now, within a week would be before the carrier group even gets there, but there's a huge military presence there already from the U.S. in the region. Oopsie. All right, here it is. On YouTube, here is the poll result. "43% say within a week, and 33% say within a month, and 5% say after a month, and 19% say never." How about on Twitch? Only 15% say within a week on Twitch, 39% say within a month, 8% say after a month, and 35% say never. CRT says the carrier group could be a distraction. Space Fraggle says, I say 2 weeks. Lorna Landgren, thank you. Lorna says distraction from what's happening in the U.S. Thanks to Griff's Dad 32, who says if the U.S. gets rid of the cartels, it will be safer for the countries they're in. Think of it as like extinguishing a forest fire. I don't know that you're going to get rid of cartels with airstrikes. Could the cartels change their tactics? Thanks, Shaft, for the gift memberships, by the way. All right, thanks for voting in our poll. We need to talk about the sanctions against the Colombia's president. We're going to talk about that. We haven't even talked about that yet, guys. Thank you, Ahwad Nazer. Ahwad Nazer, thanks for being a member. Thanks, Les Paul 85 for being a member. Olive Tav, thanks for your support. Really appreciate it. All right, in a second, we'll talk about the sanctions. Jen sent me a report from News Nation's Kelly Meyer, who said that Stephen Miller, White House Deputy Chief of Staff, would not say whether U.S. troops would be put on the ground to fight drug cartels in Venezuela. He said, these are terrorists and they're going to be killed. Karen Morris says, and Trump thinks he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize? PW360 mentioned the report from CNN earlier today. We talked about that already, which is CNN reported that Trump is considering targeting cocaine facilities inside Venezuela. Cocaine facilities and routes used for drug trafficking inside Venezuela. CNN says he has not decided on what to do. Alex Malarkey says we should be focusing our military on Europe and China. This is a huge waste, regardless of how it unfolds. Alex says, if we want to get rid of Maduro, the people already voted him out. We just need to provide them with the means to overthrow him. And even if it's really just the cartels, this is overkill. That's what Alex thinks, our viewer. Thanks, Alex, for writing in. All right, here's what the Treasury Department said about these new sanctions on the president of Colombia. So remember, in recent weeks, the president of Colombia has been critical of President Trump's strikes on boats. He said that some of these boats, the president of Colombia said some of these boats are killing innocent people, I believe, if I remember right. I'm going to sneeze. Sorry about that. He has definitely been critical of these strikes. And President Trump has been critical of the president of Colombia and said some very negative things about him. So let me show you what the Treasury Department said today about this, or said about these new sanctions. Treasury sanctions Colombian President Gustavo Petro and his support network. Today, the U.S. Department of Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control is designating the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, pursuant to counter-narcotics-related authorities. They are also designating several other supporters of Gustavo Petro, namely his wife, son, and a close associate. The Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, said, since Gustavo Petro came to power, cocaine production in Colombia has exploded to the highest rate in decades, flooding the U.S. and poisoning Americans. President Petro has allowed drug cartels to flourish and refused to stop this activity. Today, President Trump is taking strong action to protect our nation and make clear we will not tolerate the trafficking of drugs into our nation. Could there be U.S. military action in Colombia against drug targets or otherwise? The Treasury Department said today that Colombia remains the world's top producer and exporter of cocaine. They say some of it is smuggled into the U.S. They say Petro has provided narco-terrorist organizations with benefits. The President Trump says Colombia is failing demonstrably to uphold its drug control responsibilities. They also are sanctioning Petro's eldest son, the First Lady, and an associate of Petro's. Sanctions on them. All property and interest in property of the designated or blocked persons described above that are in the U.S. or in the possession or control of U.S. persons are blocked and must be reported to OFAC. I don't know what really the practical import of this is going to be, these sanctions. You can see AP said, U.S. imposes sanctions on Colombia's president and family members over drug trade allegations. Sharply escalating tensions with the leftist leader of one of the closest U.S. allies in South America. Colombia is one of the closest U.S. allies in South America. The move ramps up a growing clash between Trump and Petro, notably over deadly American strikes on alleged drug-carrying boats off South America, says AP. This week, the Trump administration expanded its crackdown to the Eastern Pacific Ocean, where much of the cocaine from the world's largest producers, including Colombia, is smuggled. And in an escalation of military firepower in the region, the U.S. is sending an aircraft carrier to the waters off South America, which we've been talking about. Petro responded. Petro said on X, he said he named an attorney he said will represent him in the U.S. He said, combating drug trafficking effectively for decades brings me this measure from the government of the society we helped so much to stop its use of cocaine. Quite a paradox, but not one step back and never on our knees. Last month, the U.S. added Colombia, the top recipient of American assistance in the region, to the list of nations failing to cooperate in the drug war for the first time in almost 30 years. The State Department is slashing assistance for Colombia, it said. The U.S. is expected to cut aid by at least 20%. Trump has vowed to pull all payments to Colombia. Trump has called Petro an illegal drug leader. He's a guy that is making a lot of drugs, Trump said Wednesday. He better watch it or we'll take very serious action against him and his country. Petro repeatedly has defended his drug policy, which moves away from a repressive approach and prioritizes reaching agreements with the growers of coca leaf, the raw material for cocaine, to encourage them to switch to other crops, pursuing major drug lords and combating money laundering. According to the UN, the amount of land dedicated to cultivating coca has almost tripled in the past decade. I guess in Colombia that means. So you could see strikes on land if President Trump carries out strikes on alleged drug targets on land. We're not just talking about Venezuela. Maybe in Colombia. Could there be some in Mexico? I have no idea. Jerry Kovac says Peru also? Last Stop Homestead said no more business as usual. I voted for this. Are we going to start seeing the U.S. carrying out strikes on land in different Latin American countries? Waltham says, has Trump administration provided any evidence? Charlene Wiega says, what happens if the cartels started putting children on the drug boats? Would the U.S. not bomb? Mark says, if they can't get their drug traffickers under control, USA will have to do it for them. Big Mike says, this administration is out of control. Wheelie says, what, the no-war president starting war? Thanks to Paul G. and Jean Paul LeChance for the memberships, by the way. The Wall Street Journal today said that moving, so again, President Trump has ordered the Trump administration, technically I guess Secretary Hegseth ordered this, but I'm saying Trump did it because it's the Trump administration. The Trump administration has ordered a aircraft carrier strike group to the Caribbean region. And the Wall Street Journal said that moving a carrier out of the Mediterranean takes critical combat power out of the region and sends mixed messages about the U.S. dedication to negotiating an end to the war in Gaza and Ukraine. And it also ratchets up pressure on Nicolas Maduro. One expert that the Wall Street Journal talked to thinks the carrier group being sent to the Caribbean region suggests that the Trump administration might be about to take things into its own hands regarding Maduro and overthrowing them. And one expert the Wall Street Journal talked to thinks this could suggest that the Trump administration is preparing to overthrow Maduro. But this is interesting. I've read the expert also said that if you overthrow Maduro, you could get a Libya-style meltdown in the country. That's another interesting point. Did The Economist, I thought I was reading a different article talking about that. If I can find it for you. Is what would happen if Maduro was overthrown? What would the country look like? Thomas Darwin says somebody worse would take over. The Economist says that those most invested in the status quo in Venezuela who might resist change are few in number, but they are dangerous, like militia groups, drug gangs, armed rebels from Colombia. They talked to an expert from International Crisis Group. So that's a whole other, we haven't really talked about that, is what follows if the U.S. captures Maduro or something and takes him to the U.S., what follows that? The Economist says the supporters of Karina Machado, the leading opposition figure, Maria Corina Machado, supporters of her dismissed talk of civil war as nonsense, saying the election proved her country is of one mind. Michael says locals have to oust him. My point is, though, if say the U.S. were to conduct a special operation and capture Maduro at night and take him out of the country, that doesn't mean that the next day the country wakes up and everybody's in agreement like, yay, Maduro is gone. Let's have a democracy now, and we're all on the same side. So what The Economist pointed out in this article from something they're talking about in this article from last week is that there's a bunch of groups that would stand to lose if there was great change in the country. Sea Turtle thinks they won't capture him and remove him. Anyways, that's just something to keep in mind. HMN says GOP nation building again. America first, baby. Scott Bellagio says, look at Panama during Operation Just Cause after General Noriega was captured. Panama went to installing their elected government. The Venezuelan people have suffered too much. I would have to research more on what happened in Panama. Sorry, I'm not, my history of Panama is not up to date. So I want to read Scott's comment for you. I'm going to look some up about that later. Oh, the Admiral resigning. Has there ever been an update on the Admiral who resigned? Remember that story? Did we ever find out why the head of Southcom resigned a few weeks ago and said he was resigning in December? And there was some speculation maybe he was not on board with the blowing up the boats. But I don't know that there was ever an update about it. Here, so just to, some people had talked about that earlier, so I just want to mention it. Thomas thinks they're keeping quiet about it. MA thinks we all know why he resigned. Here it is right here. Top military officer central to Trump's drug war will step down early. The U.S.'s, this article is from 8 days ago. The U.S. military's top officer overseeing operations in Central and South America will leave his assignment well ahead of schedule, an abrupt, surprising departure, as President Trump shows interest in extending his administration's campaign of violence against drug cartels in the region. That's from the Washington Post. Navy Admiral Alvin Halsey, the head of U.S. Southern Command, will retire at the end of the year, said Defense Secretary Hegseth in a statement. That statement did not say why he was retiring. Halsey has been in the job less than a year for what is in what is typically a 3-year assignment. Hegseth did not give a reason for the move. The admiral's initial statement did not give her a reason for the move for his move. Two people familiar with the matter said Hegseth had grown disenchanted with Halsey and wanted him to step aside. The scrutiny began about a month ago, around the time the Trump administration began ordering deadly strikes on alleged drug boats off the coast of Venezuela, they said. Halsey's retirement marks the latest abrupt departure of a senior U.S. military officer as Trump and Hegseth sweep away what they consider too much emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion. The departure of Halsey, one of the only black 4-star officers in the military, follows the firing of numerous other senior officers this year. Anyways, I have not heard of any updates on that. Like, maybe you have, but here's another story about it. There's Admiral Halsey right there. No, wait. Right there on the right. Yeah. The Navy admiral who oversees military operations in the region where U.S. forces have been attacking alleged drug boats will retire in December. The New York Times in their story said it was unclear why he's leaving his job. One current and one former official told the New York Times he had raised concerns about the mission and attacks on the alleged drug boats. Don't know. Carissa thinks he will write a book. Laura says the people of Venezuela are anxiously waiting to be free. Quirk Sugarplum says disenchanted is a fancy word for didn't want to be the patsy. Pretty Boy Floyd thinks he wasn't bombing enough. One of the viewers said he did not want to commit. Chuck Mosca thinks the admiral did not want to commit war crimes. All right, let me see if I have any other updates on this. This is certainly going to be a story that we are going to be keeping an eye on, guys. A carrier strike group being moved to the region. Hold on a second here. So this is Carrier Strike Group 12. That's what we're talking about. This is the website for it. It says Carrier Strike Group 12 is the immediate superior in command for the world's largest aircraft carrier, USS Gerald R. Ford, Carrier Air Wing 8, Destroyer Squadron 2, and assigned destroyers, and the USS Winston S. Churchill. Again, we don't know exactly what accompaniment is going with that carrier to the Caribbean region. Dave says the cartels are about to get flattened. You know, I like to, let me see if there's anything else. The War Zone is a good military news site. It's called The War Zone, twz.com. And I just want to see, they have an article on this today. And let me mention some of the stuff that they said. I'll post a link to the War Zone article. They're very good. It's a very good military news site. I just posted a link to it. So they think that the carrier strike group being ordered to the Caribbean region means U.S. operations in the Western Hemisphere are entering a new phase. They believe the war zone that this represents a new and especially significant deployment of U.S. forces amid a steady escalation in the scale and scope of ostensible counter-narcotics operations. Strikes on the alleged drug smuggling boats have become routine. There have been 3 new ones announced in just the last few days. And the possibility that the campaign could extend to targets on land, particularly in Venezuela, continues to grow. They said, the war zone said it is likely to take the aircraft carrier at least a week to get back across the Mediterranean and then the Atlantic Ocean. Where exactly the group might take up station remains to be seen. But the war zone says just pulling the Ford from its scheduled deployment is a major development and follows an already substantial buildup of U.S. naval, air, and other assets in and around the Caribbean. As of last week, about 10,000 U.S. personnel were already deployed in the region. Also, the war zone says the Navy's aircraft carrier strike groups are at the very top of the U.S.'s military power projection assets. Even if only a portion of the carrier group ultimately deploys to the area, to the SOUTHCOM AOR, it would still represent a major boost in capabilities and operational capacity in the theater. And again, the war zone said the impending arrival of this aircraft carrier can only signal a new and substantial escalation in U.S. operations in the region. Wow. The war zone also points out that there's been a steady drumbeat of reports in recent weeks, again, pointing to the growing possibility of direct action of some kind against Maduro's regime. President Trump said Wednesday his administration was moving to target drug cartels on land. He did not elaborate on what that would entail. All right. Again, I'm going to post a link. The War Zone, I really like it. It's a good military news site. I posted a link again to the article. You can read the whole article if you want about this there. But I often check them out when there's some kind of military news going on. But they certainly think this is highly significant. And they believe that this means the U.S. military operation in the region is entering a new phase. Fit over 50 says we should be defending our hemisphere. Chris Bartels thinks the carrier strike force is a classic show of force / negotiation chess piece. Somebody just mentioned air defense missiles. President Maduro on Wednesday of Venezuela claimed that Venezuela has 5,000 Russian-made anti-aircraft missiles in key air defense positions. That's according to CNN. Let's see here. Is there something else I can find about that Maduro claim about the missiles? One of our viewers, the Watcher, said Russia sold them the cheap stuff. Oh, let me just show you this. Let's see what this says. So there was an article a couple days ago about possible U.S. military action in Venezuela, and that was from the Post, right? And let me just show you something from that. Trump beats the drums of war for direct action in Venezuela. It says here, some have said the U.S. deployments and boat strikes were psychological warfare to promote fractures in the Venezuelan armed forces or persuade Maduro to step down. But Trump has said nothing to dispel concerns, the article says, that the U.S. could launch a full-scale military operation. Having declared war against narco-terrorists and designated Maduro as the head of at least one of them, one person told the Post, there really is no turning back unless Maduro is essentially not in power. The person said, at the end of the day, if you have authority to take out cartel runners at sea, you can take out the cartel boss. The vast majority of illicit drugs entering the U.S. and virtually all of the fentanyl do not come from or through the Caribbean, which is next to Venezuela, but from the Pacific coast or by land from Mexico, according to U.S. government and UN experts. Venezuela is generally used as a conduit for cocaine produced and trafficked by Colombian guerrilla groups. What is going to happen? What is going to happen? So there's all kinds of speculation about this. Yes, Lisa Sawyer mentions that Trump is leaving for a trip to Asia, right? How long is Trump's Asia trip? Won't he be there for isn't it like a week or something? Because isn't Trump supposed to meet with President Xi next Thursday? You might think that nothing big would happen while he's away. It's a 5-day trip, 5 days. He's going to leave tonight, and it's a 5-day trip. His longest journey abroad since taking office, says Reuters. So, would there not be something major happening while he's away? Bluesy Girl says Trump is doing exactly what he said he would. Gemini Rose says it's a war on drugs and it's about time. Martin Madsen says 3-day operation greeted as liberators can't fail. I don't know if Martin is being sarcastic. Gemini Rose thinks that Colombia will be next. The New York Times reports that the in addition to CNN reporting that the U.S. is considering striking inside of, what was the exact report by CNN? U.S. is considering targeting cocaine facilities inside Venezuela. The New York Times also said that the U.S. military has prepared a list of drug facilities in Venezuela that it could strike and presented it to Trump for consideration. It's a similar report, yeah, a similar report to the CNN report. They both report Trump is considering options for land strikes in Venezuela. Guys, are we gonna have news sometime that there's a U.S. strike that's been carried out in Venezuela on some kind of alleged cartel target? Chris thinks we're also going in after Colombia. We will have to see. We will have to see. Catherine Gold thinks yes. Gigi says that would be insane. I hope not. T. Fantini thinks nothing is going to happen. Will be too late. Blade Snake says Venezuela is next. Zardoz says soon, not now. Mogwai says we'll see when the carrier gets there next week. Uneldo says strike group is in the Mediterranean Sea, going to be a while. Thanks, Uneldo, for your support. A couple of articles I've looked at have said it'll be about a week. Thanks, I Am Charlie, for your support, by the way. And Mark Partis and Greenneck are members. And Lorna Landgren and Jean Paul LeChance for more memberships. Thank you. And thank you, Lorna Landgren, as well. And Space Fraggle and Paul G for the memberships. And Gleggy for resubscribing on Twitch. Hold on one second here. All right, guys. I think hey, Sebastian B. Sebastian B just gave 50 people memberships. Oh my gosh. Wow. Sebastian, that's really kind of you. Make sure you thank Sebastian if he gave you a membership, or somebody else if they gave you a gift subscription. Wow. Thanks, Sebastian. That's really nice of you. Hang on a quick moment here. Oh, and thanks to AZ Intel's dad. I really appreciate that. AZ Intel's dad. That's so nice of you. Thanks. And Lorenzo, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think we're at a time. I mean, look, this carrier group is being sent there, but there's already plenty of resources in the region for the U.S. So I feel like if there's going to be and President Trump keeps saying you're gonna see attacks on land. I just feel like it could happen at any time. I mean, maybe it won't happen, but at this point, I feel like at some point we might just hear an announcement that there's been a strike on drug facilities within Venezuela or Colombia or somewhere else in Latin America. Murder Hippo thinks it's 100% chance. I don't know that there will be any kind of advance warning. UV says it'll take the carrier a bit of time to get in range. El Cuban Tuco says soon. Paul Ham says maybe it's already happening. How about that? All right. I think we've basically gone over what kind of summarized the basics of the situation. And another thing to keep an eye on is, what about this step up in the pace of the strikes against boats? So as we said, Secretary Hegseth announced the first nighttime strike on an alleged drug boat. And this is the third one that's been announced this week, I believe. He said this happened overnight. He said there were 6 people on this alleged drug boat. This one was operated by Tren de Aragua, he said. So that's a whole other thing. Are we gonna keep seeing, every day or two, more of these? Tren de Aragua is a organization from Venezuela. So all these things to be keeping an eye on. All right, but I think at this point, we have done what we came here to do, which is kind of cover the initial basics. But I'm certainly going to be keeping an eye out for updates. So if there's big updates on this story at all, I will certainly come back on the air and do another stream. I have to imagine there's going to be more developments in all of this. Taylor McLean says, still waiting to see actual proof. All right, so I really appreciate you guys joining our coverage today. If you missed it, if you just came in, we've been on for a while. You can rewind, and we talked about various aspects of all this. Greenneck thinks there will be more to come. Yeah, so if you just tuned in, rewind and you can rewatch. But certainly going to be keeping an eye on everything. I mean, it's very, I think at any point you could hear about, oh, what is this, by the way? Okay. I think at any point you could hear about some new military activity in the region by the U.S. I would not be surprised. Hey, I really appreciate you joining us. If you want, you can subscribe, follow Agenda Free TV. We cover all kinds of live breaking news without an agenda. Agenda Free TV. And I will post updates on my X account as well, which is @Lookner. You can follow me over there. If I hear stuff when I'm not on the air and I'm not coming right on the air, I will post stuff over there. And I would suggest turning on notifications for the channel. I can never tell when big news is going to happen. I didn't know this was going to happen today. But if you want to get sent a notification whenever we go live, sign up for our free notifications. We have our own system on Discord. It works awesome. And it's free to sign up. You can sign up for the notifications. The mods will post a link in the chat, and also on Facebook and YouTube. If you go to the description of this video, you will see the link to sign up for the notifications. So I highly recommend that. Also, huge thanks to our moderators for being here. They are the reason that we can have chat rooms where people with different views can come together and chat. But our mods are there keeping it civil and respectful and under control. So thanks so much to our moderators like Beth Mythical and Ruth Krafasi over there on YouTube, Roberts May Queen. BZ's been over there, and all of our other moderators who have been there on YouTube. Thank you. And on Facebook, Kay Lowry Body, Margaret Riley, Shannon Davis, huge thanks. Linda Belk, Larry, Misha on X, moderate for us over there. 13 Alamo, LB Prairie on Idaho Star, I Got That Fire, Matthew, Kohai 3, and all of our other Twitch moderators. Huge thanks. Also, thanks to everybody who donated. So nice of you guys. By the way, I'm going to be trying to, I've been looking, I'll try to find some more military analysis. I'm guessing with the carrier group coming there, maybe there'll be some more military analysis about what the U.S. might do and what opposition they might face. I read something about, I'll have to go look it up. I read something about anti-aircraft capabilities in Venezuela. So that's a whole other thing. I'll be on the lookout for it. Maybe next time we cover this, we can talk about it. But I really appreciate Sebastian B and everybody else who donated, who I thanked. Hopefully I got everybody. Your support is what allows this channel to exist. So thank you. If you ever want to donate, you go to agendafree.tv, agendafree.tv. I owe a thank you to Mitchell Pilot. Thanks, Mitchell Pilot, for your support. Thank you, Joe, for your support. Benny Hill, thank you. And everybody else. Goldamore, thanks for subscribing on Twitch. Shadow Elf, thanks for subscribing on Twitch. Thanks to Anonymous Gifter on Twitch who gave a subscription. Thank you, Gleggy, for subscribing on Twitch. Another good way to find out when we're live is to follow us on X at Agenda Free TV. I always post there when we're going live. I post updates about the channel there at Agenda Free TV on X if you're on X. We have a chat on Discord where you can chat with other viewers when we're not on the air. A lot of our viewers like doing the Discord chat. It's free, and it's the same link as the free notifications link. So check out our Discord chat. Thanks so much to our Discord moderators for all you do. Really appreciate it, Discord moderators. By the way, if you do watch on YouTube, I would suggest turning on the YouTube notifications. Another good way to find out when we're live. But to do that, what you need to do is you need to subscribe to the channel, then click the bell, then choose all notifications. If you are already subscribed on YouTube, make sure you've clicked the bell and you've chosen all notifications to get the notifications. And huge thanks also to our Facebook subscribers. Thanked some of them earlier. People like Robert Rial II, Chuck Mosca, Sharon Klassen Goslin, Diane Allworth, Kay Lowry Body, Margaret Riley, Shannon Davis Hughes, and all of our other Facebook subscribers. Very much appreciated. Thanks everybody who's been posting comments and sending in comments and sending me updates and writing questions. Thanks for letting me read your comments today. Jean-Paul Lachance just sent 50 memberships. Incredible. That's after Sebastian B gave 50 memberships on YouTube. Now Jean-Paul Lachance gave 50 memberships on YouTube. Wow. Make sure you thank anybody who gave you a membership or a subscription. That is really generous. Thank you, Jean-Paul. That's so kind of you. Jean-Paul gave memberships earlier on the stream too. Unbelievable. Thank you so much. That's so nice of you. Always great to see more members. Thank you. Also, shout out to our all of our Twitch subscribers, like who support the channel, like Wall Street and Shaggy and Goldamore and Douthis and Chi-Town Bear and 13 Alamo, CC 143, Shrocky, and Billy Joe, and hey, thanks Who Shot JR for your support. Thanks Who Shot JR. I appreciate that. All of our other Twitch subscribers. Bill Cooper. Thank you for subscribing over there on Twitch. And all of our YouTube members. All of our YouTube members. Thank you. All the new members. We have so many new members. Between Jean-Paul Lachance and Sebastian B. All these new members. People like Jeff Anderson, Sky B, Evelyn in Maine, thanks for being members. Mama 457 Rose. Messages from above. A lot of these are new. Elvar Gagalvik, the one and only Ron G, Christopher Heft, Chubby Shadow, Margaret Little, Chug, Peter Gregory, Joseph Ramirez, What Say What, Rose of Thorns, Dag Nabbit, Macro Geek, Bluesy Girl. Members, thank you. Moragai Eni, the one and only. Astya Bjornsdottir. Evelyn in Maine, Sky B, Jerry Kovacs. Confidence in God, Phantom Reefer. Truth WSYF, JK Sinar, PrimeNet BBS. Thanks for being a member. Lewinator, Phil Meyer, Sky B, Archmagus Tim. 3Cap, Megster, Ken Lance, Evelyn in Maine, Eric, Wink Wink, Jeff Anderson, Ride with OG, Carrie's Blessed, No One, Dupper Bob, Lisa Holland, thanks for being members. Minnesota Jur. Karina Langenberg, Night Vibe TV, Chaz Martin, Danny G, Brad Lucas, Brandon Johnson, Veronica Singleton, Pat, Old Town Homestead, Double Tap, 556, thanks for being a member. Bogart M, David Davis, Ahoy One, Jared Stein. So many members to thank today, which is great. Red Girl, Foxidis, Mats Holmberg, Joseph Burke, Judas Maccabeus, Waltham, Greenneck, Sky B CAC 813. Christopher Anderson, member for 42 months. Wow, thank you so much, Christopher. It's really nice of you. 42 months for Christopher. Michael Hutchinson, our new member. All right. We are wrapping up this live stream. I appreciate everybody watching. Mercado, thanks for watching. Comment section. And Distant Galaxy over there on Twitch, thank you. But we're going to be on keeping our eye out for what developments happen. Again, it's estimated around a week for the carrier group to get to the region, but there could be stuff that happens before the carrier group gets there. Oh, David C. just gave a bunch of people memberships. Thank you so much, David C. And our new members, Chris True, Marco Johnston, Chad Varnell, Creepy Crafts, and TVOS Olhead. Thank you. All right, guys, it's time. Thanks, Donna Moore, for watching. Couple more shout-outs. Barry Eisler, Melissa Terry, thanks for watching. Paula Thompson, Juliana Martin. We're wrapping it up. We are wrapping it up. Patrick Miller, thanks for watching as well. All right, guys, that is it for now. You've been watching our live coverage of the U.S. ordering an aircraft carrier strike group to the Caribbean region. Are we going to see big military action against Venezuela or elsewhere in Latin America? We'll just have to see. But that is it for right now. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you soon with more live breaking news coverage right here at Agenda Free TV.